broadband program. And thank you for joining this call. This is the second of 4 of these webinars that we're having related to the challenge process for North Dakota's broadband program. And we're going to get into it today with some people who are experts in this. We've got members from Guidehouse, which is the consulting team that has been working on this process for us, as well as a representative from the platform ready.net. Ready is providing this platform for the challenge process in several states, and they'll be going over, when we get to that part, they'll be talking about exactly how the platform will work. As I mentioned, this is the second of 4 of these that we've had. Yesterday, we had the first with about 40 members of the carrier and ISP community in North Dakota. We're having this one with tribal government. We will also have one for nonprofits and also one for city and other local government leaders. The format is the same. We just have segmented them out in case you might have specific questions related to you. And so throughout the day or throughout the call, you can put anything in chat, and if we have a pause and towards the end, we will also then just read those out loud and answer them. And we'll do that because this program is being recorded and transcribed, so that if you have some peers who are unable to come today and see this, we'll have a link on our website. After we've done all 4 of these and have the links, you could also go and see the other ones if you wanted, and they'll be on our website at broadband.nd.gov. And but what we'll do is, if you have a question, either raise your hand or put it in chat, and then when there is a natural stop, we will read that out loud so that people watching it later can also understand what the question was, and then we'll answer it. So today we're going to go through just an overall of the Bead program. Some of you are familiar with it. We've had meetings with some of you. It'll be new for others, and then we'll go over the challenge process. Then we'll get into the registration and challenge submission walkthrough. And then that's when we'll talk about next steps and then answer questions that have come up at that point and any more that you'll have then. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Mary at Guidehouse to start the process here of explaining the Bead program and challenge process.
Thanks, Brian. So just to kick us off, again, to level set expectations here, want to provide everyone with a quick overview of the Bead program, the challenge process, the timeline we're working with here. So the Bead program provides $42 billion across the country in order to expand access to high-speed internet access. So it does this by funding a number of different activities ranging from planning to deployment to adoption. As we think about the relative prioritization of these activities, the focus of the program really is on the deployment or the infrastructure piece. So the order of operations for the state is to first fund unserved and underserved locations, so those that are receiving under 25 over 3 megabits per second and 100 over 20. After all unserved and underserved locations have been addressed, the state will then provide funding to address connectivity gaps for community anchor institutions that lack 1 gigabits per second symmetrical speeds. After all unserved locations, underserved locations, and CAIs have been connected, should there be any funding remaining, at that point, the state could fund digital equity related initiatives or activities, which might encompass adoption, affordability, and digital skill building, just to give you a flavor. So as we look at the timeline for the next year or so, it's really segmented into 4 key categories. Right now, the state has submitted its initial proposal to the NTIA. So Volume 1 has outlined the state's approach to the challenge process itself. Once the NTIA approves Volume 1, the state can then go ahead and initiate the challenge process, which will be about a 100-day process that includes 3 different phases. After the challenge process has concluded, the state will then begin subgrantee selection, which will run between the summer and the fall. And then finally, the state will be compiling and consolidating findings from challenge process and subgrantee selection, including award determinations, and submitting the final proposal to the NTIA for review and approval. On the next slide, we'll take a closer look, a double click on that second chevron, which is the challenge process. So the intention of the challenge process itself is really to arrive at a more accurate list of BEAD eligible locations. So within the challenge process, there are a number of permissible or eligible challengers, which include nonprofit organizations, units of local and tribal governments, and broadband service providers. And essentially, at a very high level, these challengers are able to challenge determinations made by the state as to whether certain locations are or are not eligible for BEAD funding. So as we look at the allowable challenge types, they fall under a few prescriptive categories. The first one includes availability. So if a challenger is aware that broadband service is not offered at a location, technical features, this might include speed, data cap, and latency. Technology type, so if the challenger is aware that the listed technology for that location is incorrect, if the location is residential but is only receiving business service, challengers can also submit a challenge related to CAI eligibility, so whether a location should or should not be classified as a CAI. Similarly, for enforceable commitments, whether there's knowledge that broadband will be deployed at that location by federal obligation, or conversely, if it will not. And then finally, planned service outside of enforceable commitments, if there's knowledge that broadband will be deployed to the location by June 30th of 2024. There are a few unallowable challenge types, namely the alteration of a BSL classification. So we can't remove and we can't add BSLs to our list of locations. This would be done through the FCC challenge process. So I'll turn it to Jason now, and he will walk through our timeline for the challenge process more specifically.
Thanks, Mary. So we do anticipate the challenge process to begin next month. This is contingent upon the NTIA's conclusion of their final queuing rounds. Once that has been completed and the initial proposal approved, we will announce an official date for the challenge process to begin. A few key phases to keep in mind. The first will be the pre-registration period. This will be for eligible entities to register for access to the challenge portal. To do so, please already sign up for the CostQuest Tier D license. We'll get into that in a little bit, as well as provide additional materials following this discussion on how to do that if you've not done so already. Once approved, you'll be provided with a link giving you access to the portal, at which point, once the challenge period begins, you'll be able to access and enter any new challenges. The challenge period will run for about 30 days with the option to extend by 15 days should it be needed, after which the rebuttal period will last 30 days following the final submission of a challenge. During this time, the rebuttals can come in as challenges are submitted, but something to keep in mind is that once the challenge period ends, the rebuttal phase will have 30 days from that point to conclude. As mentioned, we will also have the final determination on a rolling basis throughout the entire process. But once the rebuttal phase has concluded, that will kick off the 30-day period for final determinations. As with the challenge phase, this can also be extended by a 15-day period should that be needed. This will put us in about the end of the month of June, start of the month of July. Once the final determinations have been completed, these will be submitted to the NTIA, who will review the final determinations and submit their final approvals. This will be something that the NTIA has final say on, after which the final list of the results for the challenge process will be released. If you have any questions, please feel free to put those in the chat. In the meantime, we will be getting to those towards the end of the discussion. But with that, I'll turn over to my colleague at ReadyNet, Shane, to walk through what this process will look like once you've registered and are accessing the portal.
Great, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. Is everyone able to see my screen now? Awesome. So the first thing to note here is that there will be a link that's provided from North Dakota that will bring up the registration site for you all. Once you're on the site, you'll be able to see there's a little introduction, program overview, which mainly talks about the sort of things both Mary and Jason have already talked about, a little bit about location selection and evidence submission. But where you really want to pay attention is to the register button. So we'll start here. You'll get this form and you'll start filling it out with your entity name. I'm just going to put in that one for now. Fill in my contact name and email, contact number, and you select your organization, in this case, unit of tribal government. You'll click next, and there's a second registration form that you'll have to fill out with your EIN number, and then type your tribe's name as listed by the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And obviously this is not a real one, but just what I'm using as a placeholder for now. Then you'll fill out your address, your state, and then any evidence to validate the identity of your organization. Once you finish, you'll get this. Thank you for your submission. You'll get an email from the state of North Dakota saying, hey, you signed up to be registered. From there, there'll probably be a short wait as North Dakota goes and approves the accounts. Once that happens, you'll get an email to the email you signed up with that will have what we call a magic link in it. And you'll click that to be able to be taken into the portal. And I'll show you that now. So this is what you'll see when you click that magic link. Once you're approved by North Dakota, you'll land on the challenge dashboard. In this case, you can see that I already have a couple of challenges out there, but I'm going to walk through creating a challenge with you all as well. Just a couple things to call out on the screen. You'll be able to see at a high level the challenges that you've submitted, any challenges that need revision, or any challenges that you've happened to withdraw. Something you don't see on this screen right now, but you may see later, is in the rebuttal phase. If one of your challenges was rebutted, that will appear here, but don't be alarmed if you don't see that, because that doesn't show up until we enter that second phase. So you can start by clicking this add challenge button on the right hand side, or you can use the challenge map to start narrowing down where you want to challenge, or look around at locations that you might want to challenge. One thing to call out here is you can create your own zones. So you can create a zone either by drawing or uploading a shape file if you have one. And so here I'll just quickly demonstrate creating a zone. I'll call it Pierce. Add that tag. And then you can just basically click and you can draw your zone with a polygon on the map. And then you can save it once you're done. And then you'll see it will show up here. So now you can see I have these 3 zones created, and it's just another layer on your map that can help you find BSLs or areas you want to challenge. Another thing to call out when you're looking at the map is there are a few different ways to look at the BSL points that are shown. That's performance category, building type, community anchor institutions. You can also filter by unit count. You can look for funding programs, broadband technology, or even by ISPs, census block groups. And if you don't prefer dark mode, you can also look at the satellite view, a light view, or even a terrain view. Personally, I prefer dark, so we'll continue on with that. Oh, I did that kind of quickly, but what I want you to see there is the add challenge button also exists here on the right for you. So I'm going to go ahead and click that and start making a challenge so you can see what that looks like. So the first thing, and this goes back to what Mary and Jason were talking about, but you can select a challenge category. So in this case, it's either planned or existing, enforceable commitment, provider service level, or anchor institution classification. I'm going to go ahead and select provider service level. And then from there, it breaks down into different types too. And I'm just going to go ahead and use availability. You can see the other types. Are you filling out a multi-dwelling unit challenge? For this purposes, we'll say no. And then it's going to ask you some details about the challenge. So we'll have to fill this out. I'll say the provider denied the request for service. I'm just going to go ahead and pick CenturyLink. And then I'll zoom in on the map and select copper wire as a technology type. Next, you'll get to select your locations. For this particular location, for this particular type of challenge, you can only select one location. However, if you hold Shift and click, you can see here how I'm dragging. So you can select multiple locations if you want to. You can also upload a file or use your zones. So if you want to upload a list of locations, you would do that here using a CSV file. And you can also download the location spreadsheet. So I'm going to go ahead and just click a single one and add this to my challenge. Okay, so you can see the location there. You can see exactly where it is. And I'm going to go ahead and continue on with this location. It will then ask you to upload evidence and documentation to show why you're challenging and that what you're saying is happening actually is. And I'm going to go ahead and just upload a file I have pre-created for this. So that's both the evidence spreadsheet and the evidence file. I'll continue on to attestation, and I'm basically just confirming that everything I'm saying is accurate. And I'll go ahead and submit that challenge. Cool. And then you can see this is the latest one I created here. I'm logged into an account that's called wonderful.net. But then you can see there's 3 here. This is the one I just created. If you click on it, you're able to see who submitted it, when it was submitted on, what type of challenge it is, the identity, technology, all those things we selected. You'll be able to see the evidence that you uploaded and all the locations you selected, which in this case was a single one. You'll also be able to find that challenge on your challenge dashboard, and you can see it updated, and you can see them all here. So that's basically it. That's how you create a challenge and how you get registered. Thank you.
Okay, Nicole,
So
I think, yep.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, go ahead, Mary. I was just going to hand it back there.
We'll close out with some next steps, and then we'll take Q&A. As Jason mentioned, you're welcome to either raise your hand or drop questions in the chat. But Jason, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Mary. So to recap, really the next biggest item for everyone to keep in mind is the registration period. Please go ahead and fill that out once the links are sent. If you do not receive that in your inbox, please feel free to reach out and be sure to get that over to you. Once you've been registered and approved for access to the portal, that will be how you can access the challenge process and the coordinator for that. What we will also be doing is sending out the challenge process materials for your review. This will include how to navigate the site, how to interact with it, how to submit challenges or rebuttals, as well as this process that we've just covered today, key timelines and considerations. For the CostQuest license, one additional clarification for any ISPs, that will be a Tier D license. However, just for local tribal entities as well as community anchor institutions, that will need to be a Tier E license. We'll have that outlined in the materials we circulate as well after this, along with the links of where to sign up on the CostQuest site. Following that, once the challenge period opens, that will be where you can submit any permissible challenges as well as rebuttals based on the dashboards that you see. If there are any questions, we will have a help desk available, able to support throughout this process. And as mentioned, we will be continuously reviewing submissions as they're sent in. If there's any discrepancies or considerations, we'll be able to reach back out to you all during the respective periods for that. With that, we'll open up for questions either in the chat if you'd like to raise your hand. So excited to get this started.
Okay, I have one, Rick Grant from the Three Village Tribes Nation. Okay, just to completely understand what the challenges for the rest of our crew that is on the call here. A challenge from what I understand is it's let's say a resident or maybe a business or somewhere down the line, an ISP labeled this as a DSL or something smaller, like you said, the speeds, or maybe they labeled it as fiber, but it's really, there's no fiber there. And we could challenge that and say, okay, there is no fiber there. There's really nothing there. Okay, take for instance, I went down to Mandaree like 2 weeks ago to visit one of the maintenance shops for the MH Nation, and all they had there was a pair of copper for a phone. That's about it. Phone line from their substation, and I asked them if they were going to run anything. I mean, they really didn't say. They probably are, but if it was labeled improperly, we could challenge that and say, yes, this needs to be labeled properly as where it can be upgraded. Is that correct?
Hi, Rick. Yes, it's
Okay.
correct. What you just described is a permissible challenge type, which is a challenge associated with the technology for that BSL. In the materials that will be circulating, what you'll also see is the permissible evidence for each of these challenge types. So it'll outline exactly what you'll need to submit in order to challenge the technology that that location currently has.
And as far as the maps, does this program have a map of, say, our internal boundaries for all of the reported lines?
So, Shane, does the map that we currently have on the Ready portal have the boundaries for tribal territories on there, or will it just be a matter of kind of zooming into those locations and finding them on a case-by-case basis?
Yeah, it doesn't have the tribal boundaries, but if you were able to get those locations somehow in that shapefile, you could upload that as a zone, and then you could have all your zones and be able to flip those on and off so that you're able to see exactly what's in your zone and stay in that location. If you're not able to do that, then you will have to just zoom in and take a look, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you.
Brian,
Sorry,
you're on
one
mute.
thing I'll add there too, real quick, is another way you could do it is you could draw the polygon on the map too if you know the area and the location. So if you don't have that shape file, you could go and create those zones for yourself. Depending on what the boundaries are like, that might be a little difficult, but I just want to make sure you had all the options.
Thank you, Shane. So, Rick, one thing I would add on the scenario you described is the map is current as what the carriers, the ISPs, they're the ones who have labeled what the technology is on the particular sites. So there are 4 types, as we mentioned, of users who can come into the challenge process, and it's tribal and local governments. Those are 2, as well as carriers and nonprofit organizations. There's no place where an individual could come in and be a participant in the challenge process. So if an individual has an experience that they believe is contrary to what you may be seeing, they can provide that information to you if you wanted to, in essence, carry that challenge on their behalf. You would be allowed to do that, but by law, they're not an entity that can. So the challenges you described are exactly right. That you might challenge the speed, you might challenge the technology, but those were put in there by the ISPs.
Okay, I have another question. Maybe it doesn't relate to this, but ISPs and tribal organizations, how well are within North Dakota have you guys noticed? Are they working together well? And are their reporting, how accurate are the ISPs?
So I think the process, one thing in fairness on all this process is it's the first time all of us have done it. And in theory, it'll be the only time all of us have done it. So it's kind of new for all of us. The process will probably lay out, I guess, this will validate how correct the speeds have been from the ISPs and how correct that information is. So, I don't know how to comment on it other than what we see on the map. In terms of the carriers working with the tribal governments, I think it's, I've been on the tribal consultations we've had, and I've also talked to the carriers. I think there is some hit and miss there, and I think sometimes my observation has been the carriers might perceive that things are going better than maybe the tribal governments are. So anything we can do to kind of help bridge that outside of the challenge process even is what we're here for. So we definitely want, if we can help try and bring everyone to the table, and if there are concerns that really don't reflect on the map, or they may, but they're not in the challenge, we would want to do anything we can to help that.
Any other questions?
Yeah, this is not a question, but I just want to say I put it in the chat, but I want to make sure everyone heard. You can also use a third feature, the census block groups, and that might help you get even closer to finding the right points in the area that you're trying to achieve. So just want to make sure everyone heard that as well.
Thank you, Shane.
I would also say, as you're soaking on this or have questions, that email at the bottom of the screen there on the presentation, broadband@nd.gov. Please send us any questions you have, and we'll make sure if I get all those, and I'll make sure I get them to whoever needs to respond. If I can't respond, so either Guidehouse or Ready, and we want to be able to answer any questions you have. And I think the other thing is, just to reiterate, I think what Jason said is that you should be receiving an email. People on the call will get an email with the details of how to get going on the CostQuest license and what to do about registration.
Great.
Okay, sounds good. And also, I just want to put out there, if you guys ever need any type of tribal insight, or like even IT departments, or how things have been going within the tribal organization on our part, we're more than willing to answer any questions you have as well.
Yes, definitely. Thank you. And um, you may regret offering that. We will take you up on that for sure.
Thanks, Rick. Alrighty, y'all. You can expect materials coming your way early next week, so that should have all the information that Jason outlined. And again, if you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to send that our way.
Thank you, everybody, for being part of the call. Hope you have a great rest of the day and a terrific weekend.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.